try that. Turn on the sound quality. So anyways, I'm just going to keep going, and if you can't hear me, I'll just stop and maybe kind of restart it. But anyway, so the thing about live events right now is that I think there's a lot of confusion around social selling and then how that translates into live events. I think there's, been a lot of people focusing on how to do the business on social media, and there's certain things that maybe network marketers have gotten away from. Oh, thank you, Patty. Okay. So if you're joining right now, we're talking about our live events, the way of the past, or is it still effective now in the social media era? And so I was just kind of telling people that, with social media, there seems to be this confusion about what's been happening with live events, right? Are some of the things that worked in the past in network marketing, have they been ineffective? And one of which is going to be like live in-person events. And so I got a chance to spend some time with Eric Worre this past week in Las Vegas. And so it was right after convention, and he had this event called Beyond Leadership, and it was a 4-day event plus a VIP day if you choose to spend some time with different top earners around network marketing, and just kind of discuss the landscape of what's going on, discuss about different issues that come up in network marketing and how to solve it, and kind of how to mobilize your team and how to duplicate and all the leadership stuff. But one of the things that was really interesting was I got a chance to see kind of the landscape of what's been happening, just not within USANA, but then also around different companies and different leaders in network marketing. And so one of it was he talked indirectly about momentum and how that relates to live events. And so if you look at the landscape right now of network marketing companies, there's some companies that are in crazy momentum right now. There's some companies that have kind of flatlined, and there's some companies that take a little bit of a dip. And so because of social media, people are very visible about what's going on, or maybe there's a top leader in a company that has a very strong social media presence, and you see how they're doing certain things, and you think that's that's kind of the way to go about building the business, right? And so one thing is to make a clear distinction is this. So when it comes to momentum, they kind of talk about like the sales, right? Like a sales of a company, like how it just grows very quickly within like maybe 2 or 3 years. But what they don't talk about is that not all companies stay in momentum. And usually what happens is that these companies who are in momentum, there's going to be some type of drop-off. And if there's a drop-off, depending on the leadership curve of that company, that it's going to either be a big drop or a small drop, right? And so, here's what I mean by this. And so, some companies, for example, I won't name exact names, but there are some companies out there that are makeup companies that have been that have just kind of come on the market, and they went from like $3 million to like $350 million in 1 year. And so if you're an outside person looking in, you're gonna be like, oh my God, like that company is doing everything right. They're doing their social media is doing it right. And then maybe next year they only go to 450 million. And so they didn't grow as quickly. And then what happens is the people inside that company, they think, oh man, the gold rush has gone. There's this momentum isn't gonna last. And so what they do is, if those types of people tend to leave, or those leaders tend to leave, and there's this huge drop off. And so what Eric Worre has said was, momentum can create a lot of sales for a company very quickly, but what happens is momentum can also create bad leadership habits. So momentum can create bad leadership habits. And so there's things that, in the sales that goes like this, leadership also has to catch up. And when leadership doesn't catch up and it drops, it either drops really big or it drops a little bit depending on their leadership. So the way that it looks like this is that, if a company kind of is in momentum, they look like this, right? That their sales are going up, year over year for maybe a couple years. And then what happens is that they can't sustain the momentum. And so there's a little bit of a drop off. And depending on where the leadership of that particular organization is, it's going to drop to some degree to that level. And then what happens is it starts to pick up again, right? And the leadership, it kind of corrects itself. And then the momentum goes back up and the leadership starts to develop. So if you're looking from an outside perspective in, you're going to see maybe some of these companies like grow really quickly, and you might have, some network marketers might have like this shiny object syndrome where they're like, oh, that network marketing is better, or this company is better. And so you think like there's this grass is greener on the other side. And so the reason why I tell you about momentum is because there's a distinction that I think us network marketers need to make within USANA, is that there's a difference between sales and there's a difference between building. And what I mean by that is that there's sales, which is momentum, and people are excited about the products and they're just buying and they get a lot of customers, and distributors aren't and doing the smaller activities to get people to buy the products and try it. But it comes to a point in everybody's business where leadership needs to take over. And in order to kind of hold your residual income, in order to kind of develop and leverage and develop a network to build out your residual income, there needs to be some type of leadership development. And so sales might be going up, but you need to also be building leaders. And so if you talk to some of these trainers in network marketing, or if you talk to, say, like some of the top leaders who are really good at social selling, they also will tell you that live events are live and well. They are a staple in network marketing. And so if you look at network marketing as an industry, and we're talking about different types of live events, there's really kind of three types of live events, right? There is live events that are geared towards helping the team collect distributors or customers, right? So those are live events that are geared towards kind of prospecting. The other live event, the second type, is the ones where you're getting your distributors to start to engage, where it's intended to, out of all your distributors, you're geared towards 80% of it to start to engage and start to try to understand the business, and then just do a little bit, right? And then the third type of events are going to be like the leadership events, where the 20% of the people that are working this like a business, you're pouring into them, you're doing the leadership development. So we're talking about those types of live events too. And so what we're thinking about is, when it comes to live events, it changes relationships. The face-to-face relationships, it's going to be the staple of your business if you want to grow and scale your business. So it changes relationships. It creates a different dynamic between the team. It creates camaraderie, friendship, family. It creates culture. It creates all these different things that you wouldn't be able to duplicate that well online. And so even though there's small little activities that you can be doing to, prospect online and social media, at some point there needs to be a live event to kind of get everybody together and start to do it, right? And so whether it's some type of like regional or some type of event like Next Level U or Super Saturday or something, every week may be too much for certain teams, so it might be every month or every quarter or every half a year, right? So there needs to be some type of staple that is going to build that leadership in your business. And so one of the things that I wanted to kind of give you an example is that if you there's certain companies out there right now, I won't name names, but they were so good. Like, they were really good at social selling, and they grew massively. But one thing that they failed to do was have a culture to get people to come to convention, to get people to come to maybe like even a half a year kind of associate-led event where you're developing your culture. And so what happens is, like, it was easy in, but then also it was easy out. And so some of the business started to fall. And so I won't name names, but that's somewhat what's happening in the industry. And so if you're looking in terms of USANA is a great product, great business model. We have great, amazing leadership, where it's you can kind of feel the momentum shifting, and you can kind of see it, like we're going back up. And so one of the things that I want you to maybe kind of think about is that there's certain pockets within USANA, specifically maybe the Chinese distributorships in certain markets, right? So like Helen and I, so Helen's my wife, we came from Australia. So I'm actually American, but my wife is Australian. So she started the business in Australia. So a lot of our upline and Star Diamond mentorship comes from Australia, the Chinese Australians. And so when Helen and I got together, we moved the distributorship from Australia over to the United States. But one of the things that you can, if you go to international convention, you'll see like a really strong culture. There's certain Chinese groups where they like huddle after like certain sessions, and that is the culture that was developed in live events that has been cultivated, and then you see it translate into the international convention. So you see the camaraderie, you see the culture, you see people feeling like they're welcome. You're seeing all these different things that has been developed even before you got to the convention. And so when you want somebody to come to convention, it's not even a question of like, should I come? It becomes an easier sell. So it makes your team have an easier time to start to get people to international convention. So wanted to kind of set that kind of perspective, because sometimes with what's been happening in this landscape of social media, and people are trying to like search for maybe answers about what's going on, you got to know the distinction between the selling of the momentum of a company versus actual building the leadership through live events. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of share with you is that if you're listening to this, that there's things that you can actually do right now, even if you maybe don't have a strong team in a local area, or maybe you maybe don't have enough support, right? So there's certain things that you can actually do. We teach our team that there's two types of things that you can do. So you can either be a participant, or you can be a leader that hosts an event. Now, if you're somewhere in between, you can actually come together and work with other cross-line leaders. So let's talk about really first quick is being a participant. So one of the things that we always train in our team, especially over in the Australia side, is that we always train a culture of how to be a good participant. And we always talk about that, most people think that the onus and the responsibility of a good event relies on the organizer. In actuality, a good event is only as good as its participant. 20% of the success of a live event, and I'm talking about like the leadership events, rely on the organizers. The 80% is the participants. So for example, if you are coming to an event, let's say in a local area, and you're a participant, whether it's a Super Saturday or a regional, that it's there's things that you can do to enhance that environment. Because if you're there and your teammates see you do certain things at that event, even without training them, people will automatically start to do the things that you do. And I'll give you an example. So one of the things that we teach people within our team is that, for example, if we have like a leadership training, and we teach people to engage, like the older teammates, we teach people to engage with the speaker. So if a speaker tells you to raise your hand and engage, you raise your hand and engage. And so what does that do? The teammates at some point, they're going to raise their hand and they're going to engage. We teach people how to sincerely edify certain upline leaders within an event. We teach people how to get people to work together, especially if they're seeing new team members for the first time, and get them to feel welcome. We get people to start to think about, how do you, as a leader, get your teammates to start to be accountable to each other? How do you get them to collaborate with each other and get them to be accountable to each other? Because that's the best thing that you could do. Is as a leader, the thing that I see some people fall into the trap is that familiarity breeds content. And what that means is that sometimes that you're so close to your downlines or your team members that there's some level of influence and respect that is lost. And so the best way to kind of counteract that is to be able to get people to start to work with each other and start to be accountable towards each other. And so you're not really the white noise anymore. And so as a participant, these are some of the things that we kind of encourage people to do so that, the live events are good. And so it develops this culture. If you happen to not have that support, or maybe you don't know how to do live events, there might be some advantages to working with cross-line leaders. So I'll give you an example. In Washington, D.C., on December 1st and 2nd, I'm actually working with a Diamond director, Dave Dalvante, and Stacia, she was a gold director, and some of the other gold directors out in the D.C. area, to come together to put together a training, like a 2-day training to be able to help the people that have been engaged to just kind of get together to kind of leverage off of each other's experiences and just experiences and knowledge to be able to help each other grow their businesses and their leaders. And so it's not a prospecting event, it's a leadership development event. And so we get to work with each other and leverage off each other's knowledge, because then you're not going to be white noise. You get to be able to leverage off of each other's experiences. So for example, I'm a 30-something Asian male. Dave Dalvante is an older white male. And so there's going to be a good dynamic and energy into that, right? And so, nothing about racism or anything, but there's just going to be this perception of, if it was just Tim Tran and Helen Zhang event, it's just going to be Asians. Or if it's just Dalvante, he's going to have a certain demographic of people. But if you come together, you will be able to start to leverage off each other's experiences, and you won't be white noise. So that's kind of one way to be able to work together to do that, so that you're not you're not just becoming white noise. And so one of the kind of taking all this into perspective, this is kind of how it could help you. If you start to think about the business and start to think about kind of actually scaling and doing this business, one aspect is that you're going to want to learn how to recruit and get customers and develop leaders. But the other side of things that has been timeless is, how do you run events? And so I want to kind of give you some tips in this workshop, in this Wednesday workshop, to be able to think about just really quick tips on how to do really good events. And now what I'm talking about is not like prospect events. What I'm talking about is events for your actual team to develop leaders. And so, for example, if you're thinking about doing an event, the first thing I would consider is, what is the decision that you want people to make? So for example, here's the thing, right? So the first thing is, what is the decision that you want people to make? So think about that, right? So if you're doing a training, what is that training geared to do? So in our training that we've talked about in December, we just want people to come out of that event more confident. And then be able to we're going to have the things in place to be able to acquire customers. So we're going to run a campaign to be able to acquire customers. So it's just, the intention is just to do a little bit more, right? Or intention is to have confidence to re-engage and just do a little bit more. So the people that will be attending, it's really just intended to get people to engage and develop the leaders. And so that's the first thing, is what do you want people to do? If you're doing a prospecting event like a health and freedom, which by the way still works, it still works, and home parties still work, all these things still work. There might be things that you can do on social media that works, but, or like the Renew You that USANA Corporate is talking about. So there's things, like, what do you want a prospecting event to do? So if you're doing like a spa party, or if you're doing a Renew You, or you're doing like a health and freedom, what is the decision that you want that person to make? So is it to try like a product? Is it to put some stuff on their face? Is it to whatever it is, you want to gear everything towards that decision. And then from there, you want to deliver information that will give them an experience, right? So one thing that I always kind of teach our team is that experience is always better than information, right? It's not what, the old saying is that it's not what people say, it's how you make people feel. And so you can give them a lot of great information, but you want to have it in a sense where people are understanding the content to get that experience so that they can go out and make a decision. And so one thing that we get people to consider when you're thinking about what type of experience you want people to have at your event, we think about this. Whatever the experience is, it needs to gear towards like solving some type of problem, the experience needs to have some type of a development of confidence or empowerment to get people to take some type of action. And I'll give you an example. So we had an event that was a leadership event over in one of the countries that we were working in. And, for the longest time back in a couple of years ago, we've always built boots on the ground. And so leading up to that event, we had a invite campaign, right? So what that means is that we had people that we trained to do presentations, either health and freedoms or like one-on-one presentations. And then we had this huge, massive 2.5 day training. We call it like a Super Saturday or whatever. And it was all geared towards getting people to feel confident and empowered about the business. And it was also geared towards getting them confident about themselves. And so coming out of that event, there was a campaign to just invite people to the presentation because we've trained up the speakers. Coming out of that event, we had a massive momentum that started to develop leaders, that got people results, that got people to got more customers, got new teammates. And so that was the event that kind of led and sparked it, because we gave people an experience where people understood that USANA could be a health solution for them, and USANA could be a financial solution for them. So that was the problem solved. The experience also was to empower them with self-confidence mindset, things to get people to reevaluate, certain career paths if they weren't happy. And so USANA was a great way for them to be able to go in and start to develop their career, right? And so we gave this entire experience that allowed people to make a decision. And so it started, we just had this crazy momentum. And then coming out of that, there are some people that just didn't really, maybe wasn't sure, and so there was some type of follow-up that needed to happen, right? And so the third thing that I always kind of teach our team when we start to think about this was you need to create an opportunity for people to continue with the conversation. So Steve said that it's backwards. Sorry, Steve. So so it's just going to be create an opportunity or an environment for people to continue the conversation. And so one of the things that we got people to do was, we made sure that people, if they're unsure and they said, I need to talk to my husband, or I don't know if I have the money, we always pre-framed in the meeting to let people know that, hey, be comfortable with your decision. This is some type of decision, but talk to the person that brought you to this event, right? Talk to the person of seeing, how they could help you get started and make this work for you, right? And so the entire event was geared towards just getting them to be a little bit more confident about the decision. So the environment was to be able to have that open conversation after the event, and just continue that conversation. And so if some of these events that we started to do, we made sure that they were geared towards the 4 different personality types. So either the color or the DISC, or however you want to call it. And it was geared towards hitting different personality types of people who are very dominant. They want to be goal-oriented and making big money. The I's just wanted to be on stage and have a good time. The S's wanted to be supportive and help with the True Health Foundations. The C wanted information about the ingredients and the science behind it. And so we made sure that the schedule of these events, the leadership development, helped support these people's needs, so that when the event was over and they had questions, there was an opportunity to continue that conversation, so that at least they have some type of foundation that they can kind of start to base their decisions on, right? Because sometimes people don't have the whole picture, and they get skewed by, on the internet, or what people have told them about network marketing, not necessarily just USANA, right? So these events were geared towards getting people confident to be able to hear the entire story the way that we were going to present it to them, so that there was a follow-up conversation. So I hope that helps. So just to kind of a takeaway from this, if you see kind of like this momentum that's happening, or like other companies or whatever, there's a lot of great companies out there. USANA is a great company. There's just know the difference between, there's people that are building quickly through sales, and there's people that are also doing it right by having leadership development through live events. And so you kind of need the two. And so the ones that don't put an onus on live events, and they kind of just rely solely on the sales and the culture online, it may not last as much, right? And this is not coming from me. This is coming from like the discussions around with top earners, with Eric Worre, with Chinese distributors that that are star mentors over in Australia. So just to kind of put that in perspective, because I know there's been confusion around social media and what that means into like the landscape of kind of like how that affects the old school way of doing it, right? So maybe live events aren't every week. Maybe you have some prospecting events to help people get customers. Then you have a quarterly Super Saturday to help with your leadership development, and just things like that. So I hope that helps. I hope that clarifies some questions that you may have about it. If you have any other questions, put it in the comments for the next week. I'll try to jump in and answer questions where I can. But I would love to interact with people that are watching this. If you're happy to watch this replay, if you can just help me, just type in replay and ask any questions that you may have. So with that, I'll talk to you guys next time, and hope you have a great day.